Your existence is currently being weighed and found wanting by every room you enter. You feel it in the subtle shift of eyes, the way conversations continue as if you haven't spoken, and the ease with which your presence is forgotten the moment you depart. This is not a failure of others to see you. It is a meticulous, subconscious broadcast you are sending. You are teaching the world how to ignore you. The architecture of invisibility. The most profound deception of the modern ego is the belief that authority is granted by others. We operate under the illusion that if we work hard enough, explain ourselves clearly enough, or remain agreeable enough, the world will eventually bestow upon us the crown of respect. In reality, authority is not a gift. It is a gravitational pull. It is the result of internal mass. When you are overlooked, it is because you lack psychological density. You have become thin in the eyes of those around you, a translucent figure whose edges are blurred by the desperate need to be perceived as good, helpful, or available. You have traded your mystery for accessibility, and in doing so, you have liquidated your power. But tyranny of the immediate response. Consider the mechanics of the instant reply. In both digital and face-to-face dialogue, we have been conditioned to believe that speed is a virtue. We react to questions as if they are physical attacks, parrying with immediate answers to avoid the perceived awkwardness of a pause. But silence is the primary tool of the high-status mind. When you respond instantly, you signal that your thoughts are cheap and that your time is infinite resource. You are telling the observer that you have no internal filtration system, that you are a machine programmed to please. Authority, however, resides in the gap between the stimulus and the response. It is in that stoic gap where the mind processes, weighs, and decides whether the inquiry even deserves a reply. By rushing to fill the silence, you are not being efficient. You are leaking energy. You are showing that the comfort of the other person is more important than the quality of your own thought. The leakage of excess motion. Status is communicated by stillness. If you observe the animal kingdom or the halls of historical power, you will notice a consistent law. The predator moves less than the prey. The king moves less than the servant. Low-status behavior is characterized by micro-leaks of nervous energy. This manifests as adjusting your clothes, touching your face, shifting your weight, or the constant rhythmic tapping of a foot. These are not just habits, they are physiological signals of an unregulated nervous system. They tell the world that you are uncomfortable in your own skin, and more importantly, that you are uncomfortable in their presence.
When you cannot remain still, you broadcast a lack of self-containment. You are essentially asking the environment to ground you because you cannot ground yourself. The moment you enter a space and begin these micro-adjustments, the subconscious of every person in that room registers you as a non-threat and consequently a non-entity. You become background noise. Authority is the ability to occupy space without the need to apologize for it in movement. The deception of over-explaining. We arrive now at the most pervasive habit of the overlooked,
The ritual of the long-form justification. When you explain your decisions, your preferences, or your why without being asked, you are operating from a position of perceived inferiority. You are submitting your life to a phantom jury, hoping for an acquittal. Every because that follows a no is a crack in your foundation. It reveals a hidden belief that your word is not sufficient, that you require external evidence to validate your existence. A person of authority understands that the most powerful statement is the one left unsupported by excuses. When you over-explain, you are essentially saying, "Please don't be mad at me. Here is the evidence that I am still a good person." This is the language of the child seeking parental approval. In the adult world, it acts as a repellent. It invites negotiation where there should be none. It turns your boundaries into suggestions. The mirror of validation. The psychological root of invisibility is the external locus of identity. Most people do not possess a self. They possess a collection of reflections. They look into the eyes of their peers to see if they are funny, into the eyes of their superiors to see if they are competent, and into the eyes of strangers to see if they are worthy of space. If your state of being depends on how you are being received, you have no center of gravity. You are a leaf in the wind. People do not respect leaves. They respect the trees that remain unmoved by the gust. This craving for validation is a scent, a subtle pheromonal desperation that people can sense from a distance. It makes you predictable, and the predictable are always, eventually, overlooked. We must begin to dismantle the people-pleasing machinery that has been installed in your psyche since childhood. You were taught that being nice was the path to success. You were lied to. Being nice is often merely a social mask for the fear of conflict. True authority is not nice, nor is it mean. It is indifferent to the triviality of social approval. It is centered. To reclaim your authority, you must first accept the cold reality that your current behavior is a form of self-sabotage. You are not a victim of a dismissive world. You are the architect of a diminished self. The path back to presence begins with the audit of these micro-signals, the shedding of the need to be understood, the cessation of unnecessary movement, and the reclamation of the silence you have been so afraid to keep. You have spent your life trying to be seen. Now we must learn the power of being felt without the need to be seen at all. This foundation is necessary, for as we move deeper into the mechanics of the mind, we find that the habits that destroy your authority are not just social errors, they are manifestations of a fractured internal philosophy.
The cessation of external noise is merely the prologue. To truly understand why you are overlooked, we must descend into the gears of the subconscious, the hidden machinery that dictates how you perceive yourself before a single word ever crosses your lips. Most believe that authority is a performance, a costume one puts on to impress the world. This is a fatal error. Authority is an internal state of coherence. When you are incoherent, the world senses the fracture. The myth of social reciprocity. We are raised on the toxic myth of social reciprocity, the idea that if you give, you shall receive. In the realm of psychology, this manifests as the approval-seeking loop. You believe that by being overly accommodating, by anticipating the needs of others, and by softening your edges, you are building social credit. In reality, you are signaling high availability and low value. In the human psyche, that which is infinitely available is never respected. It is taken for granted. Consider the golden shadow, a concept derived from Jungian psychology. You have repressed your own capacity for aggression and self-assertion, labeling them as bad or unproductive. In doing so, you have castrated your presence. By attempting to be entirely harmless, you have become entirely useless to the hierarchy of respect. Respect is not born from kindness. It is born from the recognition that an individual possesses power, but chooses to exercise it with discipline. If you have no teeth, your kindness is not a virtue. It is a necessity born of weakness. The world overlooks you because you present no challenge to its momentum. The cognitive dissonance of the high-pitch defense. Observe the tonality of your voice in moments of tension. When an individual feels their status slipping, their vocal cords tighten, the pitch rises. They begin to speak faster, as if they are trying to fit their existence into a closing window of time.
This is the supplicant's frequency. It is a physiological byproduct of the fight or flight response, but in a social context, it signals flight. When your voice climbs, you are subconsciously signaling that you are a subordinate seeking permission. The high-status mind operates on the lower register. This is not about the natural depth of your voice, but the relaxation of the throat and chest. Authority sounds like a bell, resonant, steady, and unhurried. When you speak from the diaphragm, you are signaling that your internal environment is regulated. You are not being governed by the cortisol flooding your system. You are governing it. To be overlooked is often a result of being unheard, and you are unheard because your voice lacks the weight of conviction. You are asking for a seat at the table with the voice of someone who is afraid to be in the room. The paradox of the helpful dosed. There is a specific archetype of invisibility known as the helpful ghost. This is the individual who is always behind the scenes, always fixing the problems, always the first to volunteer for the grunt work, yet never the one invited to the inner circle. Why? Because the helpful ghost operates on the service validation model. By making yourself indispensable through labor, you have effectively turned yourself into a tool. We use tools, we do not admire them. We do not ask the hammer for its opinion on the architecture of the house. If your value is tied strictly to what you do rather than who you are, you will always be relegated to the periphery. Authority requires a certain level of strategic incompetence. It requires the ability to say no to the trivial so that your yes carries the weight of a monumental event. If you are the person who does everything, you are the person whose presence means nothing. You have traded your status for a reputation for reliability. And in the cold calculus of social hierarchy, reliability is the consolation prize for those who lack the courage to lead. The mirror of the reactive face. The most subtle habit that destroys your authority is the reactive face. This is the tendency to mirror the expressions of whoever you are talking to, the constant nodding, the forced smile to put the other person at ease, the exaggerated eyebrows to show engagement. This is a form of social camouflage. It is a desperate attempt to show that you are safe and aligned. But authority is autonomous. A person of high status does not mirror, they are the mirror. Their face remains a steady, composed baseline until they choose to react.
When you mirror someone instantly, you are letting them lead the emotional dance. You are following their rhythm. To stop being overlooked, you must become the fixed point. Let the world react to you. When you maintain a neutral, composed expression despite the emotional turbulence of others, you become a psychological anchor. People stop looking past you and start looking to you. They seek to read your expression because it is the only one in the room that isn't for sale. The burden of the first word. In social settings, the overlooked are often those who try too hard to break the ice. They feel the weight of the silence and move to shatter it with a joke, a compliment, or a mundane observation. They believe they are being socially intelligent, but they are actually displaying high social anxiety. The person who can sit in the center of an awkward silence without flinching is the person who holds the power. Silence is a vacuum. The person with the weakest frame will always be the first to fill it. Every time you rush to fill a gap in conversation, you are admitting that the tension is stronger than you are. We must shift the internal narrative from "how do I make them like me" to "how do I remain entirely self-contained." This is the beginning of the mindset of the sovereign. You are no longer a guest in other people's realities, hoping for a warm welcome. You are the architect of your own reality, and others are merely invited to observe it. The habits we have discussed, the high pitch, the over-laboring, the mirroring, and the fear of silence are all symptoms of a single disease, the belief that you are not enough as you are. You have been trying to add behaviors to gain respect, when the path to authority is actually a process of subtraction. It is the removal of the desperate ornaments of the ego. As we transition into the final integration, we must look at how to synthesize these shifts into a permanent state of being. The goal is not to act authoritative, but to become an individual of such internal density that the world has no choice but to recognize your gravity. The transition from the invisible to the indispensable is not a loud one. It is a quiet, steady reclamation of the territory you have surrendered. The transition from being overlooked to becoming a person of gravity is not achieved through a sudden outburst of ego, but through a silent, ruthless integration of these truths into your nervous system. Knowledge is merely a rumor until it lives in the muscle. To move from the periphery of life to its center, you must undergo a final psychological restructuring.
You must move from a state of seeking to a state of being. The law of the sovereign frame. To reclaim your authority, you must establish what psychologists call a sovereign frame. Most people live within the frames of others. They respond to the questions they are asked. They laugh at the jokes they are told, and they follow the pace of the person leading the walk. To be overlooked is to be frameless, a ghost haunting the structures built by stronger wills. You establish your frame through the power of the non-reaction. When the world expects you to be offended, remain curious. When the world expects you to be hurried, remain slow. When the world expects you to defend yourself, remain silent. By refusing to play the role assigned to you by the environment, you force the environment to adapt to you. This is the hallmark of the elite mind, the ability to maintain one's internal tempo regardless of the external chaos. You are no longer a leaf reacting to the wind. You have become the mountain that dictates how the wind must flow around it. The discipline of the second thought. The habits that destroy your authority are often impulsive. They are first thoughts, the immediate urge to apologize, the reflexive yes, the nervous laugh. Integration requires the discipline of the second thought. Before you speak, ask yourself, am I saying this to provide value, or am I saying this to alleviate my own anxiety? Before you move, ask yourself, is this gesture necessary, or am I leaking energy? This creates a slight sophisticated delay in your persona. This delay is perceived by others as weight. It suggests that behind your eyes there is a vast analytical engine at work. You are no longer a person of reactions. You are a person of intentions. When you finally do speak or move, it carries the force of a deliberate act. The world stops overlooking you because you have become unpredictable in the most powerful way. You have become disciplined.
The alchemical shift from usefulness to presence. We must now perform the final surgery on your identity, the amputation of the need to be useful. You have spent years proving your worth through labor, hoping that your contributions would eventually earn you a seat at the table of respect. But respect is not a wage, it is an atmosphere. Stop being the person who fixes everything. Stop being the person who is always on call for the emotional or professional needs of others. When you withdraw your constant availability, you create a vacuum. In that vacuum, people begin to realize the true shape of your presence. They stop seeing you as a utility and start seeing you as a human being of substance. You must be willing to be useless to those who do not respect your time, so that you can be essential to those who do. The lingering philosophical conclusion. The tragedy of the overlooked is not that they are invisible to the world, but that they have become invisible to themselves. You have spent so much time looking through the eyes of others, trying to gauge your own value, that you have forgotten how to look out from your own soul. Authority is the ultimate form of self-possession. It is the realization that you are the only person who will ever truly witness the totality of your own life.
When you stop performing for the phantom jury of society, the jury loses its power over you. As you move back into the world, do not seek to impress. Do not seek to command. Simply be. Walk with the steady rhythm of a man who knows exactly where he is going, even if he is only going to the other side of the room. Speak with the resonance of a woman who knows her words are finite and therefore precious. Occupy your space with the stillness of a statue, knowing that your existence is not a request for permission, it is a fact of nature.
The habits that once destroyed your authority, the over-explaining, the nervous movement, the desperate helpfulness, will fall away like dead leaves from a winter tree. Not because you fought them, but because the roots of your self-worth have finally grown deep enough to no longer need them. You are no longer looking for a door to open. You are the door. And when you finally realize that the only person whose respect you truly require is the one staring back at you in the mirror, the rest of the world will finally and inevitably stop looking past you. They will have no choice but to look up.